Well, welcome back to our 8th podcast on Jordan Peterson's new book. And the 8th chapter is called Choose One Room and Make It as Beautiful as Possible. So, first question, guys. Have you ever taken that to heart literally? Taken a room in your house or in your workplace and dedicated your time and energy to make it as beautiful as possible? Mom and Dad, you start.
No.
Yes.
Elaborate.
We didn't have a lot of money when we were much younger, but I remember...
No, Mom, why don't you go back to the beginning? Why don't you just tell us your full life story?
What age were you born?
I was born at a very young age.
Give us some context too. What about your grandparents? What were they like?
So I found this fabric that was very cheap, beautiful soft cotton, and I bought a foot for my machine and I made frilly fancy, and it was beautiful. Do you remember that room?
With those curtains?
Yes.
Yes.
Lie. And the tables and little petticoat on the table. I did it all pretty. And I always remember that room. It was a lot of joy for me. Yeah.
Sean, Bonnie, what about you guys?
We live in a very small house, which we love. And it's always been functional. It's always been a place that we can work on the couch, or, you know, the bedroom is literally just a place you go to sleep and store clothes. We don't spend time like having nice things in this house. And about 2.5 years ago, we tried to change pace from just working, just hardcore, doing nothing else but working, to trying to make the space nice. And we went out and purposely bought a couch and some furniture and decorated to a degree. I mean, it's still very bland. And reading this chapter made me think, oh, wow, we just shifted from one function to another function. We didn't make it beautiful. So, but there was something behind it, like an investment into a particular room, because we spend so much time in the lounge, this very room that we're in, might as well be nice. So we used to try and lie down on the couch and my head would get sore because the couch was like a charity couch. And it was like there was wooden bits where it should be comfortable. So we actually spent a bit of money on investing into this room, and it made us feel good. It made us feel like we were happy to be in this room. And Bonnie rearranged it several times, and every time she's done that, it made it feel like it was ours. But it's not beautiful. It's still function.
I think it's a lovely room. It's nicely color coordinated and it's good.
It's not beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty.
But isn't beauty in the eye of the beholder?
Then nothing is beautiful for me.
It's all function.
What about you guys, Seamus and Este?
Oh, I was going to go to Jaden and Charlotte next.
Okay.
We
know they've done.
Sean talks about the couch. I ran a business as a challenge, and the one thing I bought with my money was the couch that we're sitting on.
Heavy couch.
Yeah, which is a Chesterfield couch, which I've always thought was so pretty. If you ever look in like law offices or Houses of Parliament, they always have Chesterfields. And while I was doing that business, I thought about what do I even want with money? And the one thing I could think was I want to be comfortable. So I got a Chesterfield couch. The other room that I tried really hard at making pretty was the studio at 3 Type. And that is an ongoing pain in my life. But like, that's something interesting about making something pretty or beautiful, is that you need to keep going at it because things just deteriorate over time. So there's an idea in there where you have to keep at it. So yeah, that's the one room I really tried hard with. What about you?
I try to make our lounge pretty.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I try to maintain it clean and like try and do more housework to maintain how it should be.
Yeah, more like what Sean's saying. It's
Yeah.
functional and it works well, but it's not beautiful, I wouldn't say.
I think I personally think this is beautiful. We don't have art hanging.
We have no art.
Well, your window is a piece of art, really, that's always changing. I mean, you've got a glorious view, so you're bringing beauty in through your window, really. I think it's beautiful.
I didn't even notice you had no art because of the view that you have.
We've never been invited, so we don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, still waiting, guys.
And keep it beautiful.
Have a look up here. We got some art for you guys.
A phallic symbol.
Just wearing my painter's shirt. Just start with that. Este, you answer the question.
I've definitely tried at times to make this room beautiful, but to be honest, like you said, it's an ongoing process. So as soon as you lose incentive for whatever reason, it definitely becomes, if you lose the passion behind it, it becomes bland, and well, you just also just get used to it. And so that kind of loses its, like there's no inspiration behind it. So then it's kind of not beautiful. But just tomorrow, I'll be trying to arrange some new pictures, actually my own, because I thought, well,
Yeah.
I'm drawing all these pictures, so I might as well put my own pictures on the wall until I know what else to put on the wall. So
Some
I'm
nude pictures. Nude pictures.
Yeah, of myself.
That's the
3 different
beauty.
angles of my nude body up on. No, 3 different pictures that I've drawn recently-ish in the last year. So we'll put those up, and then we'll see. As this chapter brings out, I think it's a continual thing. So maybe in 3 years' time, you need to replace them, or if you still love them in 3 years' time, you keep them up. But yeah, art is an interesting thing because what you would like also changes. So I'm sure it'll change over time. But yeah, I've tried, but I don't think I've succeeded consistently, for sure.
I think out of everyone in this call, I'm probably the one who least appreciates art and beauty, in the sense that I continually make a joke that artists are just useless. There's no point to them. And it's because probably I'm a bit too pragmatic in my life, and listening to this chapter made me go, oh, there's probably a deeper connection. And I've been touched by art, but I've never seen the true purpose of it. So my next question is, what is the point? And we can talk about what Jordan Peterson talks about, but what's the point of pursuing beauty? What's the significance behind that?
Who are you gonna ask?
Anyone, whoever read the chapter. Jaden, you start.
Rephrase the question for me.
What's
What's the point of pursuing beauty?
What's the purpose of, or the point of doing it? We've all just talked about made the room better. Is it for ourselves? Is it for everyone else? Is it to, like, what's the purpose of pursuing beauty?
Art is an easier question to answer for me than beauty. I think there's a little bit of a distinction between the two of them for me. I know Peterson aligns them, but for me, there's a slight difference. Pursuing art is, I've got a theory in my head that that's pretty much the point of everything. There's a bit in the Bible where it says God created man in his own image, and the only thing we know about God at that point is that he creates. So I think there's this deep connection with art, which Peterson aligns with beauty. I think that is the point of everything. I think that's why people have children. It's just the act of creation itself. And I think there's beauty in that, and there's a link to the divine through that. So what is the point of it? I think it's a big question. It's what is the point of life, really, I think is the answer to that. That's my idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's interesting that he elevated artists of all types to those who would stick their necks out, be seen, to be different, and that they kind of got out the cave of order and into the field of chaos a little bit, that they live on that borderline, that they, because in the creative process, if you look at the biblical one, you know, the universe was topsy-turvy and God brought order to it. In the same way, artists bring us a bit of chaos in a way, because they make us look at things differently or more intimately or more deeply, and it can change our perspective. So I think he was making that point. And if it's beautiful art, then it automatically brings that beauty into our thinking and surrounds. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he mentions a little bit about saying how artists help us see.
Yeah.
Help artists allow us to see. And they reconnect us because it's very hard to perceive the world. And so artists go deeper and allow us to see it at a different perspective. Sean, have you got an idea of why we pursue beauty or
Why
or
art
art?
is important.
Well, I mean, one of Peterson's most famous rules is clean your room. And the opening subtitle for this chapter is cleaning a room is not enough. And he goes into talking about how when he was growing up, he knew every nook and cranny. He knew every little crack. He knew every little tile of every house around the little town that he grew up in. I can't remember the name of the town. White something or
Fairview.
Fairview.
And so he knew all of these details. And he even, I don't know how old Peterson is now. He must be close to 60, right? He can remember with great detail all of these areas and each individual house that he grew up around. But now that he's lived in Toronto, and he said more than twice the amount that he lived when he was a kid, he doesn't remember all the little details of the place that he's lived in a much longer time. And that's because he knew the utility of what a house was, and it became an icon. So now he looks at that structure as a house, and it becomes like in the last chapter, it talked about the difference between dogma and spirit. It becomes like a representation of the utility of it. So there's a cleanliness or a clinical nature to going, okay, that's a house, I recognize it, let's move on. Whereas when he was a kid, every little element meant something, and it felt and it smelt, and there was a feeling behind it. And I think what an artist does, at least in his interpretation, is it takes you out of the function of house. I recognize it, move on. Yeah, I know that. Back to that detail and that remembrance and the vision and possibly even the purpose of something, which I found in such a positive way, such a convicting idea, because I've always poo-pooed poetry and I don't read nonfiction books. No, I don't read fiction books. I don't even know the difference because it's a waste of time. I want to get to the real stuff. I want to read leadership books and management books and strategy books. But actually, some of the most moving stuff in your life is when you read on the detail of the flower or the little interaction with the kid or those little minute things. And he talks about when he was trying to work hard and build his career, and he'd go for a walk with his toddlers, and it was like, I need to know what time I need to get back because I need to work. And he had conditioned himself, and it really opened him up in those few moments that he forgot he had to work and he had to walk with his kids, about the little trails that would take on. And I had a moment with Sammy, almost exactly the same moment a couple of weeks ago, where I was walking on the path. I know the path back to my house, and so there's no reason I would go off in that direction because there's no road there. There's no pathway there. But Sammy, he wandered off in that direction. And I was a little bit irritated, like, no, Sammy, we don't go that way. We go this way. But for him, it was an adventure. He was looking at the details. And I caught myself in my work mode, we don't go there. And I watched it through his eyes, and it became the most interesting little corner. And I looked at all the things he was looking at that I hadn't recognized because there was no utility in them. And so when I was listening to the chapter today, I identified with that moment. It's like there's some beautiful things that happen in life that we can miss because we recognize it as an icon and we move on because we're on our own little mission. We're trying to get somewhere. and we miss that beauty. And I think that's what an artist does, is they highlight again the swirl and the color and the feeling and the emotion, and they break pattern, and they're stupid enough, and like Jaden always references, they become the fool sometimes to break pattern to allow others to come into those moments, whether it be again or for the first time. And it convicted me. It made me think I need to read more poetry. I need to get into some art stuff, and I might not become a painter, but I need to at least value it and take the time to value it.
It's really refreshing to hear you finally say that, son.
Why?
Because when I tried to teach you any kind of art when we were homeschooling, and you guys would all just poo-poo it, and you hated it, and you didn't want to do it. And I used to take you outside and make you sit at a table, I don't know if you remember, and say to you, you need to look at the butterflies. You need to see. You need to stop. Oh, Mom, this is just a lot of rubbish. And I always remember feeling so sad that you guys never wanted to do that. And it's just so lovely to hear you saying, I need to do this. It's wonderful. And it's true. I think that keeps the child in us.
Yeah.
It keeps the faith in us. Because when we can have childlike faith, because we are aware of the wonders that happen around us, that helps us to stay in that place of creativity, which is what God intended for us to be. We're created in his image, like Jaden said. We are to create too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the one significant things for us when we did have kids, as we went away from the pragmatic. And as you said, Sean, you get forced to have a slower pace of life and see things not as a utility, but as unique. And I think I was like, I remember one lesson I had at Yvonne Robinson when I was probably about 3 or 4 years old. And the teacher made me do art. And all I wanted to do was go outside and play. And she kept me there. I don't know if you remember that, Sean. But I hated art since then for my whole life. And I think only when I met Este and she said, sit with me in the park and we'll paint. And I realized I hate art. So I sat because I was in love and I was trying to do these things. And
That was the last time
I
I'd ever
started
done it.
realizing I've been inhibited because of this fear or hatred towards it. And so ever since then, I've been trying to be on a journey to just try and give music a chance, or give art a chance, or just go beyond my pure hatred for it and animosity for it, and allow it to try and affect me. But yeah.
So good.
I do think that there is art that can be pretentious, and Jordan Peterson talks about how you have different types of art. But I think if you give yourself enough time, you can start to see the beauty in it.
Which art is pretentious?
It talks about modern art and how most people will look at modern art and they will see it as very pretentious, and it has to be
Abstract art.
He talks about how people say, well, it needs to be aesthetically beautiful, and it has to match the color coordination in your house, and it has to do this. But he's talking about just the validity of art itself. And
He's talking about abstract art, right? Because sometimes that is purely for the case of provocation, or it's not technically.
I think his point is that art needs to be on the edge of chaos and making it into order. And once we sit in something for too long, whether it be cubism or impressionism, it becomes trite, it becomes commonplace. And that's not what art is anymore. So I think that's his point. It's not a specific genre of art isn't more valid than another. It's if you're not taking on new ground and making chaos into order, it's not relevant as art.
Yeah.
And then down to each individual, something's going to speak to you and something's not going to speak to you.
Yeah.
So it's all
like
very.
his house is covered in Soviet.
Yeah, which I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I think it's interesting you guys talking about you utility and pragmatism, because it reminds me of chapter 1.
I want to bring that up too.
Yeah,
the
aiming.
child pointing.
Yeah,
Sorry,
pointing at something and then aiming single-mindedly at something. Because he's talked about that before, as the world is rearranged and now things that were just around become obstacles in your way to get to where you're going. Sean's talking about walking home with Sammy. He's being single-minded and he's walking there. But in this chapter, he's almost saying the reverse, which is you have to embrace the thing that is in the way and you have to appreciate it and look at its idiosyncrasies and enjoy that as well. So they're quite yin and yang to me. Did you guys think that or no?
I apply a lot of this sort of idea to business because that's been the medium that I create in. And so it's certainly not artistic in that way, but there is ways to encounter barriers, and you appreciate them as barriers as maybe to protect you or to hem you in or protect you from competition. And then sometimes you encounter something that shouldn't be a barrier and you learn how to break it and how to navigate around it. Or perhaps because you're the one who can break that barrier, you can monetize that and open up a pathway for others to follow. And I think there's something artistic in that creation, even though it's strategic and monetized. There's something artistic that you have to navigate. And I think that's where comedians do so well, is because there's things you can't say and there's things you shouldn't say. And they have to navigate those sort of boundaries in very clever, artistic ways. They have to say things that everyone's thinking that they're not allowed to say in creative ways and bring people through a process and break boundaries. And so people can express racist thoughts or sexist thoughts, but you're crossing a boundary, but you can't really say how you're crossing it or when you're crossing it. And that's what's so interesting. And he mentioned comedy, I think, right at the beginning of the chapter. So that's the medium I've expressed it in is business. And one of my favorite things when I hear people say, "Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you're not allowed to do that," that makes me come alive because I think, "Oh, really? Let's try and play on the edge of here what's possible and what's impossible and figure out a strategy." And the other thought I had was Bob Dylan. That was clear in my mind. We even talked about it this week, I think, Jaden, where Bob Dylan was one of the best in the genre of music that he grew up in and was playing it. And then he broke the mold and he went from something that was ordered into chaos. I mean, it was so different. And all the audience that loved him and followed him, who loved folk and it was all cool, he broke it and started playing an electric guitar and went into this new arena that was just beyond people's minds. I don't understand why he's doing this. And
he
yet
went into
became
the
even
same arena that he had always been going into. He went to the Newport Folk Festival and that's where he bought his electric guitar to.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to be able to do, and they hated him for it. And yet people probably wouldn't remember, many people wouldn't remember who Bob Dylan is unless he crossed that threshold and navigated around that obstacle. So that's why, again, last chapter was so impactful for me because it's talking about the spirit and the dogma and understanding that interplay and understanding when you should be logical and when you should be illogical, when you should be creative and do something fresh and new. And I think most people are sleeping on this very issue. He's looking at it from different angles, but most people are following. Most people are not navigating. They're not using their creative instincts or their free choice, which is an expression of creativity. And they're just following the crowd. And so that's why the person who crosses first usually gets shot in the back the most. The opposition is almost never from the front. It's almost always from the back. But then that person opens the doorway and people then march over that person's dead body. And they'll go, "This is great." I think this is, for most people, this is the crux of whether they're feeling fulfilled or not fulfilled. It's expressing this sort of creativity, or at least appreciating.
He mentions about the tall poppy syndrome, which we've said a few times. And he talks about an experience where in his office, he decided to make it more beautiful. And then he had a conversation with his colleague And she said, don't do that. And he unpacked it, I think, quite amazingly, because he talked about why am I trying to make something ugly and more beautiful, and why is it opposition? And he was saying that we say wildebeest, but the wildebeest, if it looks the same, it's safe. As soon as they put a red mark on the wildebeest to examine it, the lions and the predators were easily able to target a single wildebeest. And so the idea that if you stick out, you're a target is a universal thing. The Japanese have a saying, the Europeans have a saying. My question is, have you ever been a target because you've stuck out?
Because of creativity.
And if not, why not? Mom, you're probably most the target because you're daily life sticking out.
Seamus, is that a very, very convoluted fat joke?
Can I just say this about being creative? For me, to be creative is therapeutic. It's like drinking cold water on a hot day. If I'm not creative at some time in the week, I start to get quite edgy. And for me, it's a therapy. I need to do it to be able to just have, just to be able to let go. And I don't know what that is or why it's like that. So sticking out. I like to share.
Do you sometimes not follow the crowd, but go against it, which makes you
Target.
visible and a target?
No, I don't think I do that on purpose, if I do that. I follow the crowd to learn, and I like techniques and things like that. I'm always on YouTube. I live in this little underworld of crafters, and I'm always watching how they do things so that I can learn. But then I like to step out and do what I like.
Yeah, you don't follow exactly what they do, but you'll use a technique to create.
Yeah.
That's the dogma and spirit thing again, isn't it?
I have no problem in my head to create something or to come up with an idea like that. I've got loads of creative things that go on. So I don't need to copy anybody else. I don't need to follow anybody else on that. I just learn from them with techniques. Yeah.
I was really challenged with this chapter. And I've kind of decided I'm going to find something to put in room 4 that speaks to me. Yeah, I'm not going to create it. I'm going to find it because I'm not
more clutter.
maybe another rugby shirt. But yeah, now I've been trying to get rid of the clutter slowly. There's less clutter than there was last week. But because it's so hot, I often use that room for the little fiddly bits that would be, it would just be too hot on the roof to do. So that's where the clutter's arriving. But yeah, I want to do that, make it nice. I want to make a little table for the room, and I want to find a nice piece of art that speaks to me. It's quite interesting when you spoke about museums and art galleries that collect all these wonderful things together. He didn't quite like that idea. He thought there was enough in a great piece of art for a building. That was all you need. And then to confine it. He also talked about the frames confining the art. Like, it's dangerous, don't let it out the frame. He got quite poetical about it. It was interesting, and yet he had so many pieces of art framed in his house. So it seemed, and he made that point, it seemed contrary, but he said, I've only got a small house and that's the only place I can put my art.
So can I ask you, why do you want to put a piece of art in your room? What is the reason?
I want to be spoken to by beauty. I think the point of it wasn't just about creation, although there was that in it, but that if you surround yourself with beautiful things, you will invite beauty into your life. You'll see things better.
True.
Why are you laughing?
Because here's this man who's been in the army. What have you spoken?
But I did that creatively. Everyone had the gas on 5. I had it on 6. I broke the mold. Hurt the shoulder.
Here's an answer to your question, Seamus. Someone getting shot in the back for taking a step.
Dear.
Do you agree that there's actually different kinds of creativity? So, you know, like they use that term, creating wealth. So I know Sean's heart is to help the poor and to do that. I know Jaden and Seamus, your hearts are the same. I think the girls are all the same. But Sean, for him, it's like creating wealth so that he can give it away. That's what he usually does. But you can create, I don't know.
Chaos.
But I think the word, like Seamus was talking earlier on, you said beauty and creativity. I think they're two very different things.
Jaden said that, yeah.
Or Jaden said
He was
that.
trying to answer that question.
Because some people think that it's the thing to be beautiful and to pamper yourself and to do all those things. I don't think any of us are into that.
I will say, because you haven't read the book, he talks about beauty as being connected to the divine. So he's not talking about the aesthetics,
Exterior.
fashionable, modern PC beauty. He's talking about this undercurrent of something connected to something deeper. And when he talks about beauty, he's very clear that he's not talking about just this fashionable beauty.
How do I look?
No, none of that was
Yeah.
in there.
He mentions a few things. He talks about the roar of a lion or the nakedness of a woman, and he goes through all this poetry. It's very, like, this chapter was so different to other ones because it was full of poetry. And you're like, this guy, he reads, Nietzsche, and he reads all these Aristotles and stuff, but then he also really reads all these poets. And it was really, really different. I
love that he broke down the chain of events that lead from art to where we are. So he talks about the artist going in first and following their intuition, and they kind of like a dream. They see a vision and they try to put it into words, and then the philosophers like your Nietzsche's come along and try abstract truth from the vision that was put forth.
Yeah.
And then we come along. Well, Peterson comes along and then explains it to us, and then we understand it. So there's a chain of events there where Nietzsche fits in perfectly, but you need Blake first.
Yeah.
So that's like your preach, Sean, when you said it always comes with is it a voice or a sight, or you see it, vision? What did you say?
I don't know what you're trying to reference, but I'll take credit for that craziness. So I got a question. It seems to me that the ability to create comes with having more than enough, having excess. Because when you're trying to survive and you're just trying to make it through, it doesn't feel like you can be very creative. Is that a valid point?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
According to Peterson, no. The desperation is the drive, and the artist is attracted to the burnt out, degenerate areas because they can see, well, we can do something with this. And then they get kicked out because the rent goes too high. So in Peterson's opinion, that the truly creative person, the artist, they actually need trouble and strife, and they need hunger, essentially.
Yeah.
It might depend on what you mean by what you said, Sean.
No, I think you can interpret what I'm saying in different ways. But because he references the Bible, and he says the boys came to Jesus and said, "Who's the greatest?" And then he put a child in front of him and said, "You must become like one of these."
Yeah.
And when you think about a kid, you think about the fact that they literally have nothing, and yet the kids can be entertained with sticks and stones and grass and
Worms.
and they'll make things up in their mind. Seamus used to talk to yourself. You probably still do. You don't need stuff to create. It's all imagination. It's all potential. And that's something I think a lot of people hide behind. They go, okay, well, when I get there, or when I get enough money, or when I get enough time, then I'll be artistic or creative, and then I'll problem solve. But it seems to me true creation requires nothing external. It's all internal. It's all like rooted in who you are, like what you're saying right at the beginning, Jay. You created to create. And there's something internal that you draw off, that it's not external.
I like that.
But people use that the external as an excuse not to create.
Yeah, I think that goes perfectly with what we've been saying. Like Dylan, he was comfortable playing at those festivals. He had a huge audience. That was good, but it wasn't art anymore. He wasn't conquering the unknown anymore. He wasn't hungry. So he had to completely change it up, get rid of his whole audience, and then he started creating art again. And those albums are some of the best albums ever made. Blood on the Tracks, if you go listen to that, that's art. So yeah, I think hunger is one of the big drives.
I think this is not going to maybe not be PC, but like before, like Asian China, the people are so poor, but they somehow managed to make something out of that shit situation and become so rich. I don't know if this is PC. Yeah, so I think most of the like Indian country or like old poor country, all the lady can make stuff and then they can just make some money. So I think they have nothing in their life, but they have creativity in them.
And they've created such beautiful things. Yeah, really beautiful.
Yeah. There's a paragraph right near the end of the chapter before a poem that I think kind of sums up Peterson's idea of beauty and how it helps. Beauty leads you back to what you have lost. Beauty reminds you of what remains forever immune to cynicism. Beauty beckons in a manner that straightens your aim. Beauty reminds you that there is a lesser and greater value. Many things make life worth living: love, play, courage, gratitude, work, friendship, truth, grace, hope, virtue, and responsibility. But beauty is among the greatest of these. Yeah. So, because we talked a little bit earlier about single-mindedness, but being able to go off the path and enjoy the worms and beetles and the things through child's eyes. But what he's saying here is that actually beauty will beckon you in a manner that straightens your aim. I think it just makes life more beautiful. So your purposes become more beautiful too. I don't know if I got the wrong end of the stick of that.
You just answered my question.
Did I?
I said when I create, it's therapeutic for me. It's an outlet, and I don't know what that is, but I've just realized.
But your creation is not necessarily beautiful.
Doesn't matter. I can go and just spray paint on a piece of paper. But what you've just said there is what.
Yeah, no, I'm pulling you.
I know that. I know you always.
I've got a question for everyone. Are there areas in your life where each of us are creating?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm creating flowers and different arrangements. So I am creating stuff. I know you don't care about that, Sean.
Yes.
I don't care about the flowers, but I care about the process of creating. And I think that's really important. So Charlotte, you and I will talk for hours on business and ideas and strategy and all this. I don't care for bouquets, but I care about your care for bouquets.
I think I'm having a new challenge as well, because I've just taken on a wedding arrangement job. So I have to do something different. And I'm going to create an arch, which is going to be massive. And I haven't done it before. I'm excited.
Wow, cool.
It's lovely to have a challenge that you've never tried before, but you have a confidence in you that I can do this. I can make it work. And then you have no clue, but you just go for it. That's exciting.
Taylor, what about you? You creating stuff, Jaden?
I think probably compared to the average person, yes, but compared to myself, I'm the least creative I've ever been at the moment. So it feels weird to say yes, because comparatively, no. Yeah, and I've got plans to reincorporate that. I've been putting it in my to-do list for the last year. Be creative, create, and
Create.
So that's one thing that I have yet to put a line through in the last like 10 to-do list I've done. So
Cool.
Did you-
Write a song, Jaden?
sorry.
You can write a song, okay?
Yeah, but it's the same thing of what we were talking about with Dylan. It's, are you really creating if you're just doing what you already know how to do, if you're not pushing that boundary? And I feel like I haven't invested the time that I used to invest in pushing boundaries. And that's really the joy of it for me. I think I'm more on that side of things compared to the family as a whole. I would say I'm more on the creative side of things. So when I'm not doing that, I think there's a lack of fulfillment. And I'd like to get more into that side of things again.
Did this chapter motivate, provoke, inspire?
Depress, mostly.
Sound like an artist.
Yeah. There's a story of Russell Brand going to Damien Hirst's installation gallery, where he had like crazy sharks cut in half and skulls made of diamonds and crazy art. And when he left, there was a fish and chip like van where you could buy fish and chips from the van. And Russell Brand was so accustomed to the art that he thought the fish and chip place was now an art installation. So he says the value of art is in that. It makes you look at everything in a way that you're trying to find meaning, and you're looking at the idiosyncrasies of everything. Everything has potential beauty to it. So I think when you're not pushing the envelope and you're not creating and you're not taking order and making it into chaos, you are missing out on something, and it is depressing. Yeah.
Whatever you just said reminds me of Sean. I think maybe a few months ago, you did a podcast with Bonnie saying that you feel really frustrated because you haven't been creative for a long time, and you feel like you really have to just make something and put it out there to play. Doesn't matter. So I think you guys are similar in that sense. But Seamus, do you have the same feeling?
Yeah. Sorry, that's our dog attacking me. But the year before, I got into a pattern of doing the mundane and the ordinary and the same. And I felt like this year, since Corona, thank you, Corona, things have completely changed. And I felt like, because I think my sphere is education. And where I get to create is I'm taking a group of kids and I'm rethinking how school should be done. And for me, that is just, it makes me come alive, because I can vividly picture myself in the classroom when I was younger and thinking how boring a lesson was or a teacher was. And I'm trying to engage with new technology, new ideas, and just new ways to educate kids. And so I would say definitely last year, I felt like less creative. And when you're not creative, you get distracted and you look for distraction easily. So I would get into computer games, and I'd get into just things that I just try and, you got to live for something, right? But if you are being creative, you don't need any of that stuff. And
Feel like you're attacking me.
driving it in, Jaden. How's that the Xbox?
The great distraction.
But I think there is definitely like you said earlier, Jaden, there's a divine element of us to create. We're made in the image of God to create. And I think there's many people who are not in that arena, and so they look to social media, they look to YouTube, they look to any sense of entertainment and watch other people create, and they're almost like piggybacking off their enthusiasm for creation, but they sit there doing nothing. And that's why make your room, go and tidy your room first, and now this is the next step, go and make it beautiful. And that's where I think it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it's a process that we need to do.
It's been interesting doing teaching, because I think for the first time in my life, I'm teaching some art, which to me is a bit of a joke because I don't know anything about art. I can do it, but I don't know anything. So it's actually quite intimidating because you feel like, well, now that I'm teaching art, I have to actually teach them something. But the truth is, at least so far, I think my strength is hopefully awakening some enjoyment or some wonder, because essentially a lot of art is wonder. You observe, or you get a picture in your head and you just express that thing through whatever medium that you enjoy. So it's an interesting thing, because I was actually just thinking today, like, I should really go learn something really intimidating, like oil painting, like something where you have to, we talked about previously, discipline is freedom, because I'm very undisciplined with art. I get a picture in my head and I do that, or I get a sense or a feeling, or I see something outside and I do that. But it's nothing, it's no training, no technical ability, nothing. So I was just thinking today, like, maybe I should actually go from the other angle and become structured so that I can learn something new. But
so you're all spirit, no dogma.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of things like, especially something like oil painting requires some real technique, because you have to do layers and blah blah blah. But
it's much easier than watercolor.
I love watercolor because I never know what's going to happen with it. I just put a blob on the paper and then I draw on it. I never know where it's going. And that's the whole, it's like an adventure every time, and you just get lost in it. But oil painting, I feel like it's like, okay, well, now we're doing a landscape. Now you have to structure it. You have to do your base, and you have to do the next thing. And I have to know how to blend colors. Like, yikes. I don't know how to blend colors.
Could I suggest a challenge for next week?
Yeah.
For the whole family? Could I suggest we all have to produce something for Dad's office that speaks to him?
Maybe a little
idea.
speaker.
Let's see how creative we are as a family.
Are you being serious? Can we do that?
Yeah, we all have to produce something by next week for Dad's office. He doesn't have to use them, but it has to. The theme is it has to speak to Dad.
Okay.
He has to pick one.
He doesn't have to pick one. He can choose all of them or none of them.
I love the ones you.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, definitely accept it. That's fun.
Yeah. Do I have to do one?
Yeah, you have to do one. You also have to show your creativity.
Okay.
Dad's actually very creative, and he doesn't give himself any kudos for that.
He's very creative.
I try and be, but yeah.
You see?
I'm more craft. I can make things happen. But sometimes I get creative ideas and try and make them happen. But yeah.
Definitely.
You're not creative.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Cool. Good challenge.
Yeah.
I can.
like it too.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you're still listening, please listen.
I am.
Listeners. Thanks for listening, Jen. We'll see you guys next week.
Any news on what about the weight, 10-week weight?
Oh, thanks for reminding us, Dad. Guys, would you like to give your weight loss for this week?
I'm going to start tomorrow.
You've been saying that for 2 weeks. I had 4.8 kgs, and I've put on half a kg since I lost it. So it's down to 4.3 kgs lost.
Lovely.
What's yours, Shay?
But what's yours, Jaden?
I honestly don't know. I'm going to start tomorrow.
He's hiding it in the fog.
Yet to say. As of right now, I'm 7 kgs down.
Wow.
What?
So, yeah.
What?
That's very good, Shay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we can talk about it another time, but I think, yeah, 7 kgs is awesome. I just need to get rid of my belly fat, my side handles. And
Sit
then
up. Yeah.
Love
7 kgs and he's skinny.
And are you hungry or are you just eating well?
as I'm losing it, and when I've hit 6 and 7 kgs off, I'm starting to get hungry. Yeah.
Okay.
But before that, it's like I'm not even thinking about it during the day.
What sort of times do you get hungriest?
You're gonna send food over me.
Panda just came to the door.
We have your address for Food Panda.
We'd save it for the next day for his lunch. Don't worry. Please send it.
Cook sisters are nice.
You know your WhatsApp's just going to be going crazy now with all sorts of food pictures.
Lots of pictures.
No, that's funny.
Cool. Well, well done.
Thanks, guys.
Adios, amigos.
Bye.
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 Bye.